Men in Black in the library. Bizarre experiences with these mysterious visitors. June 13, 2019. The phenomenon of the Men in Black, as well as the bizarre monsters, are two phenomena that, together with the UFOs, always fascinated me. Evidence that Men in Black exist. Men in Black in the library. Several people here have reported their unusual encounters with these bizarre beings. Common point: ALL had already had ufological experiences. Fran, a direct contact with an alien. Alice Mara, who said she had seen ships and aliens several times in the visitor zone. Alive, or that after seeing a flying saucer metallic during the day, from the window of the house for 8 times in the same week, saw 2 individuals totally dressed in black at the door of his house. Report of Fran. I went downstairs to get something for the family to eat at night. The car was parked across the street. It's a small, quiet street. When I went across the street, I saw 2 people coming on the sidewalk. A man and a woman. He was dressed in black and she had a sort of light long coat, but he could not make out their faces. As it was getting dark, I thought, I'm going to let the 2 go, and then I opened the car even for a prevention, assault, etc., and I walked more slowly to allow time for the 2 to pass. Looking at the 2 of them again, to see how far they were, the 2 simply disappeared in front of me. I still tried to look around. I did not believe. As the court is small, I tried to look and wait a little because they could have hidden. There is not in that block where they could have entered. Behold, the court is almost all taken by a commercial building and its huge parking lot, that at the end of the week stays with the gates closed and with watchmen. I saw one of the guards at the fence and I went to him to ask if he had seen 2 people walk on the sidewalk right then, right in front of him. He told me that he saw a couple go by. He, too, saw the 2 people on the sidewalk, coming toward where I would go, and I looked at them 2 or 3 times. I asked him if he had seen where they went and he told me he did not know, but that they should be a little further ahead, because they passed by. I looked from both sides, and there was no one on the street, and I saw them disappear, as if they had evaporated in the air. Wow, I was pretty confused. I had never seen anything like it before. I walked around the court to see if I could find them, since, surely, if they passed by, they should not be far away. Nothing. From what I saw, at a glance, the man was bald and very tall, and the woman had something in her head. I could not see the hair. It was as if she was bald too. He seemed to wear those swimmer-type burrows, which fit close to his head. Report of the visitor-free zone. I saw 2 strange men at the gate in a suit. That day I remembered it was not cold, nor was it summer, but it was very hot. They were very white and did not sweat. When I turned my back on them, thinking they were Mormons or something, I went to call my mother and my voice simply did not go away. I was on my back and my dog looked silently. Then I had a ringing in my ears and a lot of headache, a limp in the body. When I got to the kitchen door and looked back, there was no one. Report of Alice Mara. We were on the edge of a river, with an extensive, clean beach that although it was night you could see a person, figure. My husband was stretching a fishing net, as he worried about being robbed. He observed the place well before stretching the net. We climbed a 100-meter-long catwalk, the same size as the net, and we came from the deck towards the beach. At the end of the walkway, about 2 meters from a tree on each side of the walkway, that's when I heard the twig shake very strong. As I was holding the flashlight, I turned quickly and focused on the noise. He was almost in front of me. I screamed. "What a scare!" He said to me, "I thought you had seen me." I said, "How could I see you in this darkness?" In this small dialogue I got the focus of the flashlight on it. My husband asked who I was talking to. I said I did not know, that I did not know him. At that moment the husband took the flashlight from my hand and focused on the spot, but he was gone. My husband jumped off the catwalk and ran looking everywhere and nothing, disappeared. He checked to see if there was a trail in the sand and found nothing. In his head it just happened that it could be someone else. Where he went. Strange that we were both side by side. He did not hear the sound of the branch and did not even hear the voice of the man, much less saw it. It would not be possible for him to dive into the water. About 50 meters is shallow and we would surely hear the sound of the water. That night, even, there was no wind. Everything was quiet, no noise. There would have been no time to run to the trees beyond the beach. It was very close to us. We would have seen. In the following days we made observations in the place. I took photos of the place where he was. In fact, we tried to do a retrospective of the happened thing because we were not understanding anything. We met the residents nearby. The houses were further away from this place. yet I went to ask if anyone knew of someone who looked like the man I saw. No one knew anything. I honestly do not know what to think. It was very strange. He had something different in the speech, in the posture, and at that moment I was not thinking about anything. It was after I began to question that sudden apparition, as well as its disappearance. If he had been a normal person he would have continued the conversation. What reasons would it have to disappear like that? Besides not having hair on his head, he also had no eyebrows and eyelashes. I did not see eyebrows or ears. I think my focus was on his eyes and nose. They were very strange. I looked at several pictures and pictures of numerous types of nose, and found none that struck his. Yesterday, paying attention to this drawing of the being that appears on the page on the right side of the site from Partners and Favorites, I noticed a small similarity. The nose was thin at eye level and it was wide to the mouth. It was crushed/flattened. His lips were very thin and did not move. His voice, composed, seemed to be all over the place. So I'm not satisfied that my husband did not hear. Of course it was not like this drawing, which being smiling is very wide, but reminiscent of the format. The eyes were normal. What caught the attention was the sparkle, like sparks. The accounts of Zona Franca, Fran and Alice Mara confer with others around the world. For example, Maria, a Mexican married to an Englishman from Cheltenham 1988, said she began receiving telepathic messages from beings who said they were not from Earth. Then one day she saw two of them walking down the street. They had no hair, they wore hats to hide their lack in their heads, and they could also see that they had no eyebrows. They wore black coats, waved at her as they passed until they disappeared around the corner. The reports always denote some unusual characteristics in physiognomy, suggesting that they are not human. Besides the ability to appear and disappear suddenly, instantly, teleportation. Some characteristics reported by witnesses also suggest a robotic nature. They would be robots sent by the aliens to observe, or some contact mission by the aliens. I believe metallic voice or robotic type. Robotic walking. This was noted by Fran. They seemed to me with a gaunt gait, a weird floor, and the clothes they wore, though I glanced at them in a general way, they looked like sort of, let's say, cheesy clothes. It looked like something we do not wear today in day. MIBs in the library, a strange message. This case was reported by John Keel, one of the greatest investigators of unusual phenomena, and reproduced by Nick Redfern, one of the most active investigators on MIBs. Men in Black. In the early summer of 1967, thanks to a presentation by a woman named J.P. Paro, presenter of Babylon, WBAB station in New York, John Keel met a girl who had a fascinating story to tell. It was a disturbing story too. Given the controversial nature of the case, Keel has always agreed, and only, to refer to her as Jane. As Keel remarked, she was a very sensitive woman. There was almost something mystical about his appearance and grace. At the time, numerous reports of strange phenomena were occurring in the Mount Misery area of Huntington, New York, which was named after its infertile land and steep hills. As the area was not conducive to agriculture, it became a crossroads between farming communities. Strangely, it was also an area that seemed to attract all kinds of so-called paranormal activity. Ghostly dogs, bright-eyed beings, and black hair prowled the landscape. Mysterious and black cars crossed the roads, as well as the classic phantom caronists roamed the old ways, always at night. There were also Mount Misery UFOs, whose sightings peaked in the early months of 1967. Many young people, hearing the news on the radio, started to go there on the weekend at night, hoping to see some flying saucer. That included Jane and her boyfriend, Richard. It was a particularly cold and dark Saturday night in mid-May 1967, when Jane and Richard were driving down Mount Misery's roads, and when Richard, out of nowhere, began to feel bad. He managed to pull the car to the side of the road, and then fainted behind the wheel. Jane panicked, did not know what to do. At that moment, a white light, almost dazzling, flooded the vehicle, having originated somewhere in the depths, almost impenetrable, of the forest that surrounded the car. Jane found herself completely immobilized in her seat by some invisible paranormal force. Then it became clear that there was some time lost, since the next thing the couple remembered was being on the road, some distance from where it happened, but they did not remember how they got there. A few days later, Jane experienced something that is a common factor in UFO encounters, a strange and slightly disturbing phone call. A mysterious woman's voice on the other end of the line sounded, but Jane noticed it had a strange metallic tone, and instructed Jane to go to the local library. Ask the staff for a specific book on the history of the Native Americans. She should turn the page 42 and read what was there. It was an extremely curious request. Actually, it seemed more like an order, but Jane felt oddly drawn to following the instructions. He arrived at the library in the middle of the morning. She noticed very strange things upon arrival. There was no one there but the librarian and Jane herself. The building was completely empty and the silence was half-hearted. As for the librarian, well, his hair was black, his eyes were very black, his skin had a strange yellow-green hue, and his black clothing seemed to be in an old-fashioned style for the time. In Jane's words, the black woman was dressed in an old-fashioned outfit, like something from the 1940s, a long, broad-shouldered skirt and low-cut shoes that were no longer fashionable. Most astounding of all, before Jane could say anything, the woman handed him a copy of the same book Jane had been instructed to search for her mysterious caller on the phone. Jane, uneasy but determined to find out what was happening, sat down, opened the book, and flipped through page 42. In doing so, the writing on the page has changed from large to small and vice versa several times. Surprisingly, writing did something else. It magically transformed itself into a message. Jane was able to remember the whole message, word for word, something that suggested that the message had been subliminally implanted in her mind. Good morning, friend. You have been selected for many reasons. One is that you have certain appropriate mental characteristics. Through them, we will make contact. I have messages about the land and its people. The time is set. Have no fear. I'm a friend. For reasons known to us, you must disclose this contact to a trustworthy person. Breaking this code is breaking the contact. Proof should be given. Notes should be kept on this. Stay in peace. Jane rose from her chair and closed the book. The mysterious woman was gone. Jane was alone in a quiet, deserted library. Understandably, she dashed off with a terrified run until she left the library without looking back. Source: Nick Redfern, Mysterious Universe. MIB in the library. Case 2. Peter Rosewitz is a professor of humanities and folklore at the Juilliard School in New York who also teaches at the C.J. Jung Foundation for Analytical Psychology. One day, in 1980, he was in the University of Pennsylvania campus library behind a UFO book. The book had been recommended to him by a colleague who thought Rosewitz, as a folklorist, might be interested. At one point Rosewitz saw, out of the corner of his eye, someone close to him, with black wrinkled trousers and a black shoe. He looked up and saw a man standing 6 feet in front of him. The figure was wearing a black suit. The man's shirt was bright white, almost equaling his deadly pallor. Without being invited, the man sat in a chair next to Rosewitz and asked what he was doing. Rosewitz replied that he was seeing a book about UFOs. The man asked if Rosewitz had never seen a UFO, and the teacher replied negatively. The man then asked Rosewitz if he believed the UFOs were real. Rosewitz replied that he did not really have an opinion and that, after reading the book, he realized that he had little interest in the subject. The man suddenly shouted, "Flying saucers are the most important fact of the century and you're not interested?" Then he got up awkwardly, just as he seemed to have had difficulty sitting down, and put his hand on Rosewitz's shoulder, saying quietly, "Stay focused," and with that he said goodbye. As soon as this strange man left, Rosewitz was engulfed by fear. He believed he had had a truly paranormal experience, and the idea terrified him. He strolled around the library in an attempt to think better. Strangely, he did not find a living soul in the building. Although it was a normal time, and the place always had many people. He went back to where he was sitting, absolutely confused. An hour later he got up to walk through the library again. This time, everything seemed to have returned to normal. It was only later that Rosewitz heard of MIBs. Since then she has become one of the greatest authorities on the subject. Men in Black have, for me, a clear connection to aliens and UFOs. So if you've had any more intense ufological experience, it's not impossible for you to get visitors like these. If you are still one of those people who goes to a library something rarer and rarer, I believe, look at your side. Maybe a MIB is watching you.